Bibliophiles of the internet. Today I'm here to share a good old-fashioned book haul. Full disclosure, the week I'm filming this, there is a lot going on in my life for a lot of different reasons that I do not feel the need to share here, but I still wanted to make something for you all, and I needed a video that was a very, very light lift, and so I settled on a book haul. I actually enjoy watching book hauls myself, and I'm going to assume if you're still watching this that you do too, so let's just be cool, enjoy ourselves, and let's talk about some new to me books. This isn't really in any sort of order, but I thought I would start with an arc I got towards the end of last year, which was The Influencers by A.M. McLemore. This is A.M. McLemore's adult thriller debut. It's about this mom who's super well known on social media for making family-related content. She does a lot of videos featuring her 5 mixed-race daughters, which everyone seems to love. But now her daughters are grown and they're dealing with the consequences of having their entire childhoods online. And to make things worse, their mother's new husband has turned up dead, and someone seems to have torched their mansion to cover it up. So the story is following all the messy family drama that unfolds as everyone tries to figure out what actually happened, and their online audience is also watching every move very closely and forming their own suspicions. I actually had the pleasure of talking about this book a little bit with AM last year when I hosted their in-person book launch for Flawless Girls. At that point, they were just kind of teasing the fact that they were writing this adult thriller/mystery about the toxicity of social media with this very discordant family at the center. So it's kind of wild to finally have a physical copy in my hands. I believe this comes out mid-April, so not too long to wait, but I'm very excited to see what AM brings to the adult space. Speaking of the Dial Press, they also kindly sent me a galley of Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinnan, which comes out on May 27th. This is adult fiction. It's about Max, a trans corporate lawyer who takes a pretty serious fall down some stairs at a New Year's Eve party, and upon waking up in the hospital, decides to make some very big life changes. And her first order of business is to give some good old-fashioned heteronormativity the old college try. She ends up meeting another corporate lawyer named Vincent, who is very much interested in a relationship, but not only has he never dated a trans person, but he's also carrying his own baggage from his gap year in Thailand, where he had an explosive entanglement with a gorgeous stranger. I've never read anything from Nicola Dinnan, but her debut, Bellies, is also on my list. The premise for this story feels borderline satirical to me because the idea of a queer person experimenting with heteronormativity just tickles me for some reason, but it also touches on the lure of acceptance and security that so many adults, especially queer and trans adults, are desperate to find for themselves. I was also very lucky in finding a secondhand copy of The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist. This came out last year. It's a suburban horror story that likens itself to the show Yellow Jackets, which I find very intriguing. The main character is Talitha, who just drifts from place to place trying to avoid anything to do with the horrific tragedy that took both her mom and 8-year-old sister. But then a researcher tracks her down and offers to pay her to come back to her hometown, where only she and 2 of her friends escaped their homes 20 years before, while the rest of the town turned into ghosts. I've seen a few of my mutuals reading and reviewing this here on BookTube, and it just really piques my interest. There's something about this calling to me and making me feel like it's the type of horror story that would really work for me. So I'm glad I found a secondhand copy so I can eventually try it for myself. Going back to some publishing mail, Saga Press also kindly sent me a galley of When We Were Real by Daryl Gregory, which possibly comes out on April 1st. This is a speculative road trip story that takes place on a cross-country bus tour. It's following these 2 friends, JP and Doolin, who've known each other for decades. When JP finds out that his cancer has unfortunately returned, the 2 of them decide it's finally time for them to share one last adventure on this epic week-long trip. A few years back, it was actually discovered that everyone in this world is living in a digital simulation, and this bus tour they're embarking on takes tourists to go see and explore the various glitches in the simulation that have begun to crop up. I love innovative and interesting speculative fiction, so there's a lot about this story that really appeals to me. Not only are these glitches most likely going to be super weird and strange and bend reality in really interesting ways, but it also sounds like the characters are joined by a madcap motley crew of fellow passengers who are also taking this bus tour for their own twisted reasons. This next galley is probably my biggest flex in this video, and I know that, but Del Rey very kindly sent me a galley for The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which comes out on July 15th. This is a witchy, sort of gothic horror story following 3 women in 3 different eras who encounter danger and witchcraft. The main character is Minerva, a graduate student studying the history of horror literature, and she is specifically focusing on the works of author Beatrice Tremblay. As she's putting her thesis together, she discovers information suggesting that Tremblay's most famous novel, The Vanishing, was inspired by true events. These events happened when Tremblay actually attended the same university that Minerva is attending now, and apparently Tremblay became obsessed with her roommate, who then disappeared under very mysterious circumstances. As Minerva begins to dissect this manuscript further, she begins to believe that the evil force that once stalked Tremblay and her missing roommate might still be walking the campus halls. Listen, anything Sylvia writes is going to be great. We know this. It has been proven time and time and time again. I do not expect this book to be any different, and I cannot wait to see how these different levels of folklore, history, literature, and real life play with each other in this story. Going from anticipated release to anticipated release, Vintage Books also kindly sent me a finished copy of A Gentleman's Gentleman by T.J. Alexander, which actually recently came out on March 11th. This is T.J. Alexander's first historical romance, and of course, it's extremely queer and extremely trans. The story follows Lord Christopher, a trans man who's more than happy to live alone and far away from the prying eyes and ears of the ton, with only his cook and butler for company. But then his lawyers inform him that his late father's will dictates that he must find a wife by the end of the season if he wants to retain the family fortune and estate. This is basically the worst case scenario for him because he is not attracted to women and he has no desire to move to London. That's when he hires a new valet, James Harding, to keep him abreast of all the household ongoings and marriage market ongoings, but of course James's presence as an exceedingly traditional and handsome man throws a wrench into things. This is one that I think you're going to see me reviewing sooner rather than later. I have been so excited for this release because it's still exceedingly rare to get stories about trans people as told by trans people in the historical space especially, so I will definitely be prioritizing this. This next book I have to show you is actually the international paperback re-release of a book that I would say was perhaps the most popular book of 2024, and that is none other than James by Percival Everett. As I said, this was like the book of 2024. It is historical fiction and a reimagining of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn as told from Jim's perspective. For those not familiar, Jim is an enslaved man who overhears that he's going to be sold and separated from his wife and child. Instead of waiting for that to happen, he runs away and hides nearby on Jackson Island just long enough to come up with a plan, and there he runs into Huck Finn, who also has not only run away but actually faked his own death in order to avoid his violent father, and that is the beginning of their infamous adventures. I have been wanting to read from Percival Everett for quite some time. He is the author of Erasure, which went on to be adapted into the award-winning film American Fiction, which is actually a phenomenal adaptation. So he just kind of rode this perfect wave from the success of that movie into 2024 with this new release. I have never heard a single bad thing uttered about this book, and trust me, I have seen it everywhere. Everyone who's read it has loved it, and I desperately want that experience for myself. Next is an upcoming release that I actually read earlier this week as a filming, and that is Love at Second Sight by F.T. Lukens, which comes out from Simon Teen on April 29th. F.T. Lukens is known for writing zany, heartfelt, funny, queer YA stories that range from paranormal to fantasy. This one's more on the paranormal side of things and set in an alternate version of our world where supernatural and paranormal creatures live alongside humans. Our main character, Cam, is human, but his best friend is a witch and his crush is a werewolf. He's also starting at a new high school where supernatural and human students go to the same classes. But even though he's always felt a little bit boring as a non-magical person, he suddenly awakens his clairvoyant abilities when he has a vision of someone else's gruesome death. So not only is he dealing with these new powers, which have the entire town in an uproar because clairvoyance is a sort of once-in-a-generation ability, but now he and his friends have to try and piece together who the killer is before they can strike again. I had an absolute blast with this. It was so much fun and so entertaining, which should come as no surprise if you've ever read literally anything by F.T. Lukens. It is so aggressively on brand for them, and I loved it so much. If you love F.T. Lukens like I do, you should absolutely be getting excited for this. After that, Fierce Reads very kindly sent me paperback copies of the first 2 books in the Little Thieves trilogy by Margaret Owen. I believe the 3rd and final book is coming out sometime this year, but this is a YA fantasy series that I believe has demisexual rep as well. It's about a character named Vanja who was abandoned to be raised by the gods of death and fortune and has scraped by as a lowly maidservant to the princess. But then the opportunity arises to steal a string of enchanted pearls, which can transform her into the very same princess that she's been serving all these years, and that leads her to begin living an extremely dangerous double life. I believe this is another retelling of The Goose Girl, but it's supposed to be a much darker take. I want to say the third and final book actually comes out next month, so I am not going to make any promises about catching up with the series before then, but this could still be a cool stretch goal for 2025. These next 3 books are a little bit interesting because they were sent to me for free from the lovely folks at Art of Arc Bookbox who just told me to enjoy them. There is no posting obligation, there's no sharing obligation, which is kind of wild. Of course, I am disclosing that they sent them to me for free, but this is not a sponsorship or promotion. I was not paid to promote their service, and I want to be very clear about that. I'm not going to give you a spiel about Art of Arc Bookbox because I was not paid to do so, and doling out free promotion would not be fair to me, but I will have a link and some information down below if you would like to learn more for yourself on your own time. So here's how this worked. When they reached out to me, I told them which of their recent picks I had already read and enjoyed, and I also told them I've been looking forward to more sci-fi, horror, and speculative fiction. They then picked out 3 of their books based on that. They did not tell me which titles they were selecting for me, but I actually think they did a really great job. The first book they kindly sent me is actually a really exciting recent release, and that is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a recent literary sci-fi release. I've been very curious about it because it also has some elements of metafiction, which is really exciting. It's about a disabled Nigerian author who decides to write outside of her usual genre, and she ends up writing the next great sci-fi novel that goes on to become an international success. She calls this novel Rusted Robots, and she has no idea how it's about to change her life, not only by catapulting her to stardom, but also by potentially changing the future of both humankind and whatever life form might come next. Like I said, there are some slight elements of metafiction. It's also structured as a book within a book, a story within a story. I have no idea what to expect, but I have very high hopes that this is going to obliterate my brain, which is what I want. The second book they sent me was American Rapture by C.J. Lead. This is a super weird, disgusting horror book about a virus spreading across America and transforming the infected to make them absolutely feral with lust. The main character, Sophie, was raised to be a good Catholic girl, and she's trying to traverse the hellscape of the Midwest to try and find her family while the world around her crumbles into madness. Again, from what I've heard, this is like a viscerally disgusting, weird, uncomfortable, disturbing story, but those have kind of become buzzwords for me. I'm actually really impressed that Art of Arc thought to send this one because little do they know, I am a slut for weird shit. I didn't know if I was going to say that word out loud, but I did, and I am. The last book they sent was definitely the biggest surprise because I had never heard of it before in my life, but it does sound like something I would read. That is The Brief History of Living Forever by Yaroslav Kalfar. This is a blend of dystopian fiction and speculative fiction set in an authoritarian near future where a woman contracts a deadly illness and immediately goes about trying to find and reconnect with the daughter that she gave up at birth 40 years before. She eventually does track down her daughter, Teresa, who lives in the States and works as a researcher for a secretive biotech company who are desperately trying to uncover the key to immortality. But unfortunately, before they can find a cure, Teresa's mother passes away under very mysterious circumstances. Not only that, but her body is taken away to be disposed of in a mass grave in the Florida wastelands. So Teresa ends up traveling to the Czech Republic to meet with a brother she's never seen before or knew she had to try and convince him to help get their mother's body back so they can bury her in home soil. I genuinely don't know anything else besides that. Obviously, there's an element of biotech that seems very shady and dangerous, but I don't quite know where the speculative twists and turns are going to come from. Like I said, I had never heard about this before Art of Arc sent it to me, so I definitely tip my hat to them for such a pleasantly surprising choice. And again, not sponsored, but I do want to once again thank Art of Arc for very kindly sending me these books. And lastly, I wanted to end with some recent book mail. MCD Books very kindly sent me a galley of Ray Naylor's next book, Where the Axe is Buried, which comes out fairly soon on April 1st. Ray Naylor is the author of The Mountain in the Sea, and this is his next full-length science fiction tech thriller where several world powers have created complex algorithms to govern their states and optimize political decision-making and the welfare of humankind. That is going about as well as you would expect, but despite this pursuit of efficiency and intelligence at all costs, rebel forces begin converging to try and protect humanity from its impending destruction. So there's this ragtag crew of tech-minded people who are banding together to trace a mysterious sequence of clues embedded in a new mind-bending technology that could very well save the human race. I very much enjoyed The Mountain in the Sea. I still think about it, and I'm really excited to see this author take somewhat of a new direction with this high-octane tech thriller. It feels ambitious, it feels relevant, and I think it's going to be a pretty badass takedown of authoritarianism and all its inherent dangers. So there you have it. Those are a few of the newest books that have found their way onto my shelves. If you've bought or borrowed anything new or exciting lately, I would love to hear all about it, so feel free to drop that down below in the comments, and also let me know which of these you think I should read first. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something to add to your TBR, and until next time, educate yourself, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself and others, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!